We thank the panel and those in the audience for joining us. This is day 2 of a criminal justice reform oversight hearing. We've had 2 panels yesterday and a distinguished panel today, and we appreciate the time and attention. This is ripe for oversight, but it's even more ripe in time to do something about it. This committee is the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. There are a number of things that we can do on a bipartisan basis to make this part of our society and this part of government working better. Today we continue our discussion on criminal justice reform, and the committee is devoting, as I said, 2 days on this topic for a very important reason. The time to enact meaningful criminal justice reform is now. At a time when gridlock has become the norm, something important happened yesterday. We saw 2 senators, 2 House members, and 2 governors on both sides of the aisle in a bipartisan, bicameral way express the need and desire to actually move meaningful criminal justice reform. While the details of the proposals varied, the unifying theme we heard was that reform is needed and there is no time to waste. States are leading the way in innovative reforms of which the Federal Government can learn. We were fortunate yesterday to hear from the Governors Bentley and Markell about the reform efforts underway in Alabama and Delaware. And they're not the only states. States like Texas and Georgia and others are making meaningful reforms and have led the way and shown that it can be done and reduce the rate of recidivism. As we continue our discussion today, it's time to continue to roll up our sleeves. We have the chance to hear from a panel of experts who can answer our questions about effective criminal justice reforms. And we're looking forward to hearing about specific topics: the use of evidence-based risk assessment tools to identify lower-risk inmates, identifying programs that have demonstrated record of reducing recidivism rates for use inside of prison facilities, keeping more juveniles out of prison, and what's going to happen to these people when they come out of prison. Remember, the vastly expanded number of Federal criminal laws and the use of Federal criminal courts in enforcing economic and other regulations is something that needs to be addressed. We also need to address the ever-increasing Federal prison population and the Bureau of Prisons budget. It's 140% of capacity. It's consuming nearly 1/3 of the Department of Justice budget. You can't continue to sustain those numbers. We need to also examine reforms that are smart on crime, but also protect public safety. There are people that have committed heinous crimes. They need to pay a punishment. They need to pay back a debt to society. But let's also remember that more than 95% of the people who go to prison, they're coming back out. Are they going to be better criminals? Or are we actually going to engage in the reform necessary to be the Department of Corrections? In fact, the bill that Hakeem Jeffries and I have sponsored would rename the Federal Bureau of Prisons to the Department of Corrections. That's the way it is in all 50 states. All 50 states, it's the Department of Corrections. But the Federal Government attitude and approaches this is it calls it the Bureau of Prisons. It's time to change the name, change the attitude and the approach, and recognize that we need to engage in reform. The prisoners are reentering the community, and too many are returning to a life of crime. When we look at a smarter, fair, and more cost-effective way for our criminal justice system to work, we must also ensure that our efforts do not jeopardize public safety. Indeed, some of the proposals discussed yesterday strike this proper balance. For example, we heard ideas from Senator Cornyn, Governor Markell, and others about using risk assessments to identify low-risk prisoners. Those prisoners can then be subject to community-based supervision instead of the expensive and counterproductive imprisonment. Or maybe it's some combination in between. The panel today has this type of expertise, and they've seen this up close and personal, and that's why this is an important hearing today. We look forward to exploring those ideas so we continue to find areas of reform that we agree on while standing firm on the policies and strategies that are essential to success. We again thank the panel. I'll now